On today's History of Politics, we're going to talk about an amendment that's very, very, very important. And it applies to what's going on even as we speak. It's the 25th Amendment. This amendment was ratified in 1967 as a response to what happened after the John F. Kennedy assassination. Because up until that time, the rules were kind of vague as to what the presidential succession was and how another vice president would come into office. So let's talk about that a little bit right now. The first part of the amendment tells us that if the president dies, resigns, or is removed from office, the vice president automatically assumes the presidency. So if Donald Trump, for example, dies, resigns, or is impeached and convicted and removed from office, J.D. Vance would automatically take his place. That's what the amendment says. The second part of that is that the vice president, who is now the president, can nominate a new vice president for himself, but it has to pass Congress by a majority vote in both the House and the Senate to confirm him or her as vice president. And when we say majority, we're not talking about a simple majority. We're talking about 2/3 vote in the House and 2/3 vote of the Senate. Meaning that if, hypothetically speaking, if J.D. Vance became the president, he could nominate Pete Hegseth as his vice president. And he would have to be confirmed by a 2/3 vote of the House and a 2/3 vote of the Senate. Okay? The third part of the amendment deals with the voluntary relief from duties, which is if the president has to go into a hospital to have a procedure done and he's going to be hospitalized for 2 or 3 days. Or if he gets shot, say, like Reagan did, and he's going to be in the hospital a couple of weeks, he can send a declaration to Congress, and the vice president becomes the acting president. Acting president. And then once the president is able to come back to work, then he again sends a declaration to Congress, and that pretty much restores him to his active full-time duty and position. Okay. Then comes the fourth scenario, which is the fourth part of the 25th Amendment. And that deals with the involuntary. In other words, if, and this is very important now, so pay attention to this. If the president is deemed to be unable to perform or execute the duties of his office, the vice president and members of the executive branch, meaning his department heads, his cabinets, a group of them can go to Congress and declare that he is unable to do the duties of his office. And immediately, the vice president will become the acting president. Now, if the president decides that I'm not going for that, I'm perfectly fine, you're not going to force me out like that, and he contests it, then Congress has to hear and rule on it in 21 days. So, how does that apply to today's scenario, right? The here and now. Well, listen, we've all seen it, right? We've all seen the cankles where Donald Trump can hardly put his foot in his shoe. We have seen the hand with the major discoloration of the hand, hidden poorly with some really bad makeup application. Donald Trump is 79 years old. He eats like a 10-year-old. His bad cholesterol count is probably off the charts. If you've looked at his face, you can see the bloating in his face sometimes. Sometimes his face, where he used to look orange all the time because that spray tan that he wears. But there are times now where his face is so discolored, it doesn't look orange anymore. It looks brown. It looks like he stuck his face into a pile of horse shit, to be honest with you. I'm just stating the facts. That is not CVI. I have spoken with a number of medical professionals. Not to mention, I had family members myself who had congestive heart failure. That's what he has. It fits with his age and everything else, not to mention the stresses of the office. If you remember Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, when they went into office, they were dark-haired. When they came out, they had white hair. The stress of the office. A 79-year-old man cannot handle that stress. Joe Biden, remember how they talked about Joe Biden? Now, mind you, his stuttering was a lifelong problem. It was a speech impediment. He had it since childhood. That wasn't the indicator of his frailty. His facilities were quite well. But he was still 81 years old. And this is why I believe that we should have an age limit on people running for the presidency. One, and for Congress too, and the Supreme Court. Because the founders did not plan, after George Washington, the founders did not want the same people in there forever. They wanted young, average Americans to come in with fresh ideas who would expand and create better in the country to move us forward. Now, back to Trump, we see the signs of illness, not to mention the obvious signs of frontotemporal dementia. The forward lean, the smooth criminal lean that he has from Michael Jackson's video, that lean of his searching for words, his slurring. Donald Trump can't even walk a straight line anymore. And J.D. Vance knows it. J.D. Vance is a weasel in and of himself. Because after all that negative talk about Trump, when the opportunity came up, Vance took it. You can't believe anything that comes out of Vance's mouth. Vance wants to take over the presidency. And he's ready for it. Just think of it this way. He went to see the Pope dies. He went to see Hulk Hogan died. Right now, he's keeping his distance from Trump, but watch what happens when he sees Trump next time. Might be a done deal. Who knows? The bottom line is, Trump is not the kind of guy that's going to go quietly into that dark good night. And if J.D. Vance invokes the 25th on him, J.D. Vance and his cabinet invoke the 25th, Trump is going to contest it. And we're going to be in chaos even more. Because he'll fight him and he'll make calls to Congress for 21 days and try to get him on their side. But then let's say that they go with Vance and they say, no, you're out. I could see Trump going to the Supreme Court and trying to he'll get Ronnie Jackson or some other quack to write a letter for him and saying that he's in perfect health and he can perform the duties of the job, it's going to be a mess. But that's the 25th Amendment. It's designed to give clarity as to the succession between presidents and vice presidents in case of illness, death, resignation, or removal from office. And again, it was ratified in 1967 as a direct response to what needed to be done after the JFK assassination. Because up until that point, the rules were very, very vague. But now it's defined. And if I were you, I'd keep a real good close eye on J.D. Vance right now because he's ready to make his move. Trump is flailing. He's flailing. He's made sure not to be seen in public in the last couple of days. As we speak, he's in Florida golfing. Just some things to keep in mind. If you learned anything from this, please like, subscribe, comment decently, comment respectfully, and we'll see you next time. That'll be Monday. We'll see you again, and we'll go into the 26th Amendment. Until then, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.